Hey everybody, just a quick note, this video is part 2 of a 2-part series that's introducing Pathfinder to players who are familiar with Dungeons & Dragons. If you have not yet seen part 1, I would highly recommend that you watch it right there. I'll put links to it in the video description as well. And for everybody else, sorry for making you wait, here's part 2. Alright, I think that pretty much covers everything we need to know about the differences in combat. So let's move on to spells. On the surface, spells look and feel very similar between the two systems. You've got the same schools of magic, abjuration, enchantment, evocation, illusion, etc. And you have either a spell attack roll or a spell save DC that works very similar. Spells have similar components, somatic, verbal, but they do differentiate between spells cast with material components that you would need to retrieve from a component pouch and that get used up in the spell's casting, and the spell focus component, which uses a holy symbol or a wand, etc. D&D 5e generally says you can use a focus to qualify for the material component, right? In Pathfinder, you might need to have both. You also have spell slots that refresh each day, though Pathfinder does have spells that go up to level 10. Spell level and slot progression is very similar, but casting and preparing spells gets a little more restrictive. Clerics, druids, and wizards are prepared spellcasters, meaning they have to choose each day which spells will be prepared, and then when they cast that spell, it uses up both the spell slot and that use of the spell for the day. If they think they'll want to cast a certain spell more than once, they have to use their limited number of spells they can prepare to prepare that same spell multiple times. That is old school. Cantrips are, of course, exceptions to this rule and similarly don't use spell slots either. Now, bards and sorcerers are spontaneous casters and thus cast spells similar to how all spellcasters do in D&D 5e. If you know the spell, you can use your spell slot to cast it as often or as infrequently as you'd like without worrying about preparing it or how many times you've prepared it. The drawback for these two classes, though, is that their repertoire of available spells tends to be much smaller. You know, I appreciate the diversity that this creates between casters, making it so it's not just like wizards are the best casters, the end. But I'll admit that I would have a lot of anxiety, I think, playing a prepared spellcaster, trying to decide how many times I might want to cast each spell each day, and often kicking myself for preparing X twice and Y once when I should have prepared X once and Y twice, right? You can upcast spells with higher level spell slots, as in D&D. This is called Heightening a spell in Pathfinder. It's mechanically similar, though with prepared spellcasters, you'd need to prepare the spell at the higher spell level. And with spontaneous casters, you'd need to use up one of your spells known for that spell at that level in order to do so, right? So instead of picking a 4th level spell, you might just take Fireball at the 4th level. You don't just automatically get to upcast it at whatever level you want as soon as you learn it at the base level. Now, I should mention that there seem to be a variety of feats and class features that can help you get around some of the onerousness of all this, letting you, say, change up your prepared spells in the middle of the day, or have a certain spell that is a signature spell for you and can be upcast a few times per day without needing to know it at that level, etc., etc. You just have to build for those kinds of things if you want them. Also, cantrips do scale quite a bit better, essentially gaining power every time you get access to a new spell level, right? So at character level 3, you get 2nd level spells and spell slots, and also your cantrips are now level 2 cantrips. Man, that really makes me want to redo my cantrips only cantrip blaster that I did last week and see if I could recreate them in Pathfinder. Okay, in addition to regular spell-slotted spells, though, in Pathfinder you have what are known as focus spells. These are sort of Pathfinder's answer to half-casters, which really don't exist in Pathfinder. Champions and rangers, don't get spells or spell slots. In fact, rangers don't even get focus spells. But supposedly they can be built to hit like a truck. Anyway, certain class features or feats give you access to focus spells, but focus spells are different than spellcaster class spells and spell slots. You're going to gain a feature or take a feat that's going to let you learn one specific focus spell and one focus point to spend on that spell. You can gain up to 3 focus points eventually via other class features and feats, and focus spells scale just like cantrips at half your level rounded up. So again, at character level 3, your focus spell would be considered a level 2 focus spell. Now, the nice thing about focus points is that you can essentially recover spent focus points by taking the refocus activity. You basically pray or meditate, etc. for 10 minutes and regain all of your focus points. In this way, it's sort of like being a D&D warlock. Very few spell slots, but you get them back on a short rest, right? Only it's even easier to recover focus points because it only requires 10 minutes as opposed to D&D's short rest, which takes an hour. My understanding is that you're basically meant to have all of your focus points at the beginning of every, or at least most, combat encounters. I should mention that full casting classes do have both spells and spell slots, but also focus spells and focus points, which is a really nice way to let them cast spells beyond just cantrips and spell slots, right? Also, as I mentioned at the beginning, you can take archetype feats that give some limited access to spells and spell slots if you're not a spellcasting class but want a little more magical capability. Sustained spells are the Pathfinder 2 equivalent of concentration spells in D&D 5e, but sustained spells are both friendlier and less friendly. Friendlier in that there's no concentration that can be broken and thus end the spell effect. Less friendly in that you have to use up one of your very precious 3 actions each turn to sustain the spell's effect. Good news though, you can have multiple sustained spells going at one time. The only limit on you is your number of actions, right? As long as you are willing to spend an action to sustain them every turn, you could potentially have 3 sustained spells going at once. I think I would really like to build around that. Again, I definitely do not have time in this video to do any kind of in-depth analysis of all the Pathfinder spells. Which ones are the most powerful, how they compare, power-wise to spells in D&D. There are over 100 pages of spells and spell descriptions in the core rulebook. Just know that, generally speaking, they're very similar from what I can tell in power, capabilities, and very oftentimes name to spells in D&D. If anything, my impression is they might be slightly less potent overall in Pathfinder, but that's mostly based on the limited experience that I've had thus far, so I'm perfectly willing to be wrong on that count. All right, I think that pretty much covers our basis for spells. Let's move on to conditions. There are a ton of conditions in Pathfinder 2. The core rulebook has 42 compared to D&D 5e's 15, so almost triple, right? There are also a lot more ways to inflict these conditions on your enemies by comparison via not only spells, feats, and class abilities, but also sometimes just making attacks with the right kind of weapon, like we've mentioned. I won't go over every single one in detail, but here are the ones that either had important differences between their fairly common D&D counterparts, or that just showed up a lot while reading through the book. We've already discussed flat-footed. I think this condition comes up more than any other condition in the book. And again, as a reminder, when you're flat-footed, you have a -2 circumstance penalty to your armor class. That circumstance bit is important. We'll be discussing it in a minute. Other than that, I think the most important conditions to be familiar with are the various states of being seen. They exist on a continuum, starting with observed, which is just, there you are, I see you. Next comes concealed. With concealed, you're sort of lightly obscured. Maybe you're in a thick fog or something. You can be observed, just not 100% clearly. In that case, someone would have to make a flat DC 5 check, no bonuses or anything, to attack you successfully. Now, that's not that difficult a check to make, but it also means that 25% of the time an enemy would just straight up miss you, despite their plus to hit, your armor class, or their attack roll. For that reason, it might make sense to, say, try to be standing in dim light, which would make you concealed if your enemy didn't have low light vision or dark vision. And yeah, Pathfinder 2 differentiates between low light vision and dark vision is not just given out to almost every single ancestry. I think dwarves and goblins are the only ones who get it, though several others get low light vision. I mean, that said, I'm sure that plenty of enemies have at least low light vision, so maybe that tactic wouldn't work particularly well, but there are lots of ways to inflict the dazzled condition, which means that all creatures and objects are concealed from you. Anyway, hidden comes next on the are you seen continuum. If a creature is hidden, if you wanted to attack them, you would first have to make, again, a flat check, just like with concealed, but this time the DC is 11. And again, if you fail, you just straight up miss them regardless of your attack roll. You are also flat-footed if an enemy is hidden from you, and vice versa, right, if you're hidden from them. Undetected and then unnoticed come last on the continuum. So there's really no such thing as surprise or like a surprise round in Pathfinder 2. If you are unnoticed, a specific condition, your enemy just has no idea that you're there. And you are thus also undetected, a separate condition, which means that your enemies are flat-footed to you, and if they wanted to attack you, they would have to pick a square where they think you are and make a similar DC 11 flat check to even attempt to hit you in the first place, just like with hidden, but this time with undetected, the flat check and attack roll you make are made in secret by the DM, so that if you miss, you don't know if it was because you didn't roll high enough on the DC 11 flat check, or if you picked the wrong square, or you just rolled really poorly on your attack roll. Dastardly. As for surprise, it would seem that basically as soon as you and whoever you are with goes from unnoticed to simply undetected or some other seen status on the continuum because one of you attacked somebody or failed your stealth check or made a really loud noise, etc., then initiative is rolled, combat begins. So you could potentially open with an attack and then you're rolling initiative. It's not like the enemy is surprised and you all get to make an attack first or anything. Anyway, a few more important conditions to highlight. Blinded. This is much more punishing in Pathfinder 2. It means that all terrain is difficult, you automatically critically fail perception checks that require sight, and otherwise take a -4 penalty to perception checks. Worst of all, other creatures would be hidden from you and all that entails, as we've discussed. Frightened is kind of amazing in Pathfinder 2, like I mentioned. In D&D, it just means that you can't move closer to what's frightened you, and you have disadvantage on ability checks and attacks while you can see what's frightened you, right? In Pathfinder 2, it negatively affects almost everything you do. All of your checks and DCs, period. Now, what's interesting about this condition and many, many conditions in Pathfinder is that it always includes a value. If you're frightened 1, then you have a -1 penalty to all your checks and DCs. Frightened 2 is a -2 penalty, and so forth. Unless otherwise stated, your frightened condition does just automatically go down by 1 at the end of each of your turns, and kind of makes sense as you sort of get accustomed to being in the presence of whatever's scaring you so bad, and means that you don't typically have to succeed on a will save or anything to end the frightened condition, though I'm sure there are times when that is the case. But I think my favorite thing about frightened is that just about anyone can cause the condition in their enemy by taking the demoralize action in combat that I talked about earlier. To attempt to demoralize a target, you just pick someone who's within 30 feet of you and you make an intimidation check against them. It's a great reason not to dump charisma. If you succeed on that intimidation check, they are frightened 2, which means a -2 to all of their checks and DCs. That's kind of awesome. Grabbed is kind of the equivalent to grappled in D&D, except that in addition to being immobilized, grabbed means you're also flat-footed, making it even more powerful than in D&D, I think. What's more, if you're grabbed and you try a manipulate action, like even just drawing a weapon, for example, you have to make a fairly easy DC 5 flat check. Again, no bonuses. But if you fail, you just don't get to do whatever you were trying to do, right? Your arms are pinned to your sides. Persistent damage is an important difference here. It's a condition that shows up with a lot of spells, weapons, feats, and features, so I wanted to mention it. With persistent damage, whether from acid or fire or bleeding, etc., you always take that damage at the end of your turn so long as you have the condition. But afterwards, you make a flat DC 15 check, and if you succeed, the condition ends. the amount of damage you take will be specified by whatever it is that you're doing that's applying the persistent damage condition, whether a spell or a feature or a feat, etc. And there aren't really a lot of dots in D&D, damage over time abilities, right? Might be kind of fun to try and make a dot build in Pathfinder 2. Finally, condition-wise, prone is pretty similar in both games, except that instead of giving melee attackers advantage against you, like in D&D, if you're prone in Pathfinder, you're simply flat-footed, as usual. You also have a -2 to your own attack rolls. You can, however, take the take cover action while prone to gain a +4 to armor class versus ranged attack rolls, but you are still flat-footed, meaning it would only be a +2 to armor class, right? Okay, that's enough about conditions. We're coming down the home stretch here. I hope you're still with me. Let's highlight just a few other important differences for a D&D player to understand about Pathfinder that I have just not yet covered. Advantage and disadvantage do exist in Pathfinder, but they're known as fortune and misfortune, and they tend to come up a lot less frequently. Resistance and vulnerability exist in Pathfinder 2, but vulnerability is known as weakness. Also, instead of resistance just meaning half damage and weakness double damage, there is a number tied to it. So resistance 5 means you would resist 5 flat damage of the damage type that you have resistance to, but would then suffer the rest. Weakness is the same, but it's just a flat amount of extra damage. You also see weakness come up a lot more often in Pathfinder 2 than vulnerability in D&D, and I really do like that. One thing that stood out to me was the different kinds of bonuses you can get and the way that they don't stack amongst bonuses of the same type. So in Pathfinder, you've got circumstance bonuses, item bonuses, and status bonuses. And essentially, if you have more than one circumstance bonus or item bonus or status bonus that affect the same thing, then you only get to benefit from the best one. For example, if you take the raise a shield action, like I mentioned earlier, you get a circumstance bonus to your armor class. If you get behind cover, you also get a circumstance bonus to your armor class. You could, since they're both circumstance bonuses, you couldn't get behind cover, raise your shield, and get a bonus to your armor class from both of those things. You'd have to choose whichever one was better, and that might depend on what kind of cover it is or what kind of shield you're using, right? The same is true of item bonuses and status bonuses. Using a +1 longbow item bonus to shoot a +2 arrow item bonus doesn't give you a +3 to hit. It just gives you the best one, the +2. For status bonuses, if you have a +1 status bonus to hit from the heroism spell and a +1 bonus to hit from the bless spell, you don't have a +2. Pick one. Or better yet, tell your friend to not cast bless on you. Similarly, penalties of the same type can't stack to make things even worse, right? Though, if, for example, you had a -2 circumstance penalty to a thing and a +1 circumstance penalty to the same thing, then you would just have a -1 total, right? Finally, there are untyped penalties and bonuses, a fourth kind of bonus and penalty. Those are not considered circumstance, item, or status, and those do stack, though it seems like they're really rare. Another very important and interesting thing that applies when you are not in combat but in exploration mode, and it's that there are very specific things that you can and probably should be doing while you are walking along, other than just walking along. And it's more than just, I'm trying to be stealthy or I'm looking for traps. You can only do one of these things at a time, and all of them are going to mean moving at half of your exploration speed. But if you're not in combat and you're not in a hurry, they are for sure worth doing, so let me discuss each of them. First up, avoid notice, or stealth. Interestingly, if combat breaks out while you're trying to avoid notice, you would roll a stealth check for your initiative instead of a perception check, which could be really great for high dex sneaky characters, right? You could be searching while in exploration mode, which is, looking for traps and hidden doors. But then you've also got the defend mode, which only works if you have a shield, but means that if combat breaks out, you already have your shield raised and thus will benefit from its AC bonus without having to take the raise shield action. There's being in Detect Magic mode, which just has you casting the Detect Magic cantrip over and over if you have it, at regular intervals, helping to prevent you from, say, accidentally moving into magic auras, etc. You can put yourself in Follow the Expert mode, which I really like. This basically lets you gain assistance from someone better than you at something that they're doing. So long as they are at least of expert skill proficiency in a thing, then you just try to follow their example and get to add your level in proficiency bonus plus more based on that character's proficiency level to boot, even if you're untrained in it. So let's say you've got a sneaky rogue in your party and they're trying to avoid notice, but you're a clanky champion. Well, follow the expert and get a bonus to your stealth check. You can be in investigate mode, and this lets you use the recall knowledge skill action to constantly be seeking out useful information about your surroundings as you travel along that might help you somehow in whatever you're trying to do, wherever you're going. There is the repeat a spell mode. Yes! This is Pathfinder 2's answer to the I'm just constantly casting the Shillelagh cantrip all of the time, so when combat breaks out, I've just got it active problem. That feels cheesy in D&D, but I've talked about it in several videos, right? So yeah, if you've got a cantrip that you want to have active when combat breaks out, no problem. Finally, you can put yourself in scout mode, and this just has you like scouting ahead and behind the party constantly, and doing so gives the entire group a +1 circumstance bonus to their initiative roll if and when combat breaks out. Nice. Oh, also I should mention you can put yourself in hustle mode during exploration to move at double speed. You can only do this for a number of minutes equal to 10 times your constitution modifier, so you can't maintain it forever, but nice if you're in a big hurry. All right, couple more things. One thing I really love about Pathfinder is that they give an official stamp of approval on retraining or respecking your character. Especially if you're new to the game or to your class, you very well might make a choice in a feat or a skill that you're gonna regret later on, right? In Pathfinder, with time, usually a week, sometimes as much as a month, and probably some money spent on hiring a trainer, you work this out with your DM, you can swap out a skill, a feat, or even a class feature in Pathfinder 2. You can't, of course, change your ancestry or even heritage, nor your background, class, or, sadly I think, ability scores. Still, feels pretty generous to me. Finally, Pathfinder 2 does have a much more fleshed out crafting system that allows for crafting of both mundane and magic items with the right skill proficiency, time, and resources. You can also etch runes into existing items, making them magical, and there's a complex but well-defined system for how to do so. Just know that it seems to thus allow you a little more reliable way to get the kinds of magic items and magic bonuses that you want, rather than just relying on the mercy of your GM or a roll on the loot table, etc. All right, let's talk about final thoughts. Whew. How many naps did you have to take to get through that? I want a nap. So, overall impressions, generally speaking, I really like what I've seen and the little that I've played in Pathfinder 2. I mean, for the most part, it feels very similar to D&D in that you're role-playing a high fantasy character in a high fantasy world with lots of similar game mechanics. As far as those mechanics are concerned, Pathfinder definitely feels a lot crunchier by comparison. And by crunchy, I mean tactical and maybe a little more rules and numbers heavy, right? I'm not 100% certain yet if I would end up liking that more, but knowing myself like I do, and my own love of min-maxing and number crunching, I truly think I might. That is not to say, however, that I don't also have some reservations. As nice as the 3-action economy can be for its simplicity and the way that it can almost force you to do new things in combat, it can also be really frustrating when everything seems to require an action. And you might, as some of my allies ended up doing a couple of sessions ago in our Pathfinder game, spend the entire first round of combat just standing up, picking up your sword, picking up your shield. End of turn. That can be frustrating. They didn't even get to move and try and get within striking distance. Fortunately, I was a monk, so I could just stand up and fly in for the attack. Also, the fact that so many actions that you would regularly want to take in combat, depending on your character, I guess, have the action trait and would thus also suffer from the multiple attack penalty can be really painful as well from experience. I'm also just a little skeptical and nervous still about the no multiclassing thing. On the one hand, I'm intrigued by the deep customization that can occur while staying within a single class the entire game. On the other, I worry that it might feel overly confining when I'm so accustomed to just multi-classing to my heart's content in D&D. So yeah, there's plenty that I love about the rule set, as you've heard me mention over the last, however long it's been. Weapon traits, crit rules. There are a few things that I have reservations about, and then a ton that I just have yet to experience in game, so I don't know that I can adequately judge. But overall, I'm super interested and excited about Pathfinder, and I do hope to be able to convince my own table to convert one of the 2 games that we're currently playing over into Pathfinder so that we can all just learn and experience it together. Anyway, that's the end of the video today. I hope you enjoyed it. I had a blast with it, and I hope that you found it useful. Please check out the other content in the channel if you're not currently in the habit of doing so. And big thanks for liking and subscribing and commenting. I hope you know how much I love you. I do. Thank you so much for being here, for sticking this out, and for all that you do for me and for the channel. I hope that you have a really fantastic day and a fantastic week, that you'll be good and happy and kind, and that you stay safe. And that I see you again very soon. But until then, take care. Bye. Hey, you know they're all the same. You know you're doing better on your own. So don't buy in. Just live right now. Yeah, just be yourself. It doesn't matter if it's good enough for someone else. Oh man, I am all over the place today. It just takes some time, little girl, you're in the middle of the ride. Everything will be just fine. Everything will be alright. And grant skill training or and grant proficiency. And it just takes some time, little girl, you're in the middle of the ride. Everything will be just fine. Everything will be alright. That's our mantra for the OGL apocalypse. If you get a critical success, don't even say that. Don't say that. Well, I've already said that, so don't say that. Oh, I'm losing my voice. Don't say that. Well, don't say that. Don't say that. Well, 2 or more. If you, gosh dang it, I got a new teleprompter today, and just spent about an hour trying to get it to work right, but I'm realizing that in order for it to work right, I need a new camera. It's probably about time I got a new camera anyway, because I've just been using my phone for my camera, and it does fine, but it's not exactly as high a quality as it could be. So now I get to start the whole video over. You could tell that I was reading off the teleprompter because I was looking just slightly to the left. It was very off-putting. So I'll just have to go back to my usual looking down at the notes every few seconds. New favorite shirt. 0 bothers given. We could all use a little more Pooh Bear in our lives, I think. Whew. This is long.